Hi guys, we're back for chapter 3 of the best Christmas pageant ever. Or will it be? Well, we'll find out. Mrs. Armstrong, who was still trying to run things from her hospital bed, said that the same people always got the main parts. But it's important that we give everybody a chance, she told Mother over the telephone. Let me tell you what I do. Mother sighed and turned off the heat under the pork chops. All right, Helen, she said. Mrs. Armstrong called Mother at least every other day, and she always called at supper time. Don't let me interrupt your supper, she said, and then she went right ahead and did it anyway, while my father paced up and down the hall, saying things under his breath about Mrs. Armstrong. Here's what I do, Mrs. Armstrong said. I get them all together, and I tell them about the rehearsals, and that they must be on time and pay close attention. Then I tell them that the main parts are Mary and Joseph and the wise men and the angel of the Lord. And I always remind them that there are no small parts, only small actors. Do they understand what that means? Mother asked. Oh, yes, Mrs. Armstrong said. Later, Mother asked me if I knew what that meant about small parts and small actors. I didn't know exactly. None of us did. It's just something Mrs. Armstrong always said. I guess it means that the short kids have to be in the front row of the angel choir or else nobody will see them? I thought so, Mother said. It doesn't mean that at all. It really means that every single person in the pageant is just as important as every other person. That the littlest baby angel is just as important as Mary. Go and tell that to Alice Wendelkin, I said, and Mother told me not to be fresh. She didn't get very mad, though, because she knew I was right. You could have a Christmas pageant without baby angels, but you couldn't have one without Mary. Mrs. Armstrong knew it, too. I always start with Mary, she told Mother over the telephone. I tell them that we must choose our Mary carefully because Mary was the mother of Jesus. I know that, Mother said, wanting to get off the phone and cook the pork chops. Yes, I tell them that our Mary should be a cheerful, happy little girl who is unselfish and kind to others, and then I tell them about Joseph, that he was God's choice to be Jesus' father, and our Joseph ought to be a little boy. And she went on and on and on and got as far as the second wise men when Mother said, Helen, I have to go. There's someone at the door. Actually, there was somebody at the door. It was my father, standing out in the porch in his coat and hat, leaning on the doorbell. When Mother let him in, he took off his coat and bowed to her. Lady, can you give me some supper? I haven't had a square meal in 3 days. Oh, for goodness sake, Mother said. Come on in. What will the neighbors think to see you standing out there ringing your own doorbell? And why didn't you think of doing that 10 minutes ago? Mrs. Armstrong called Mother 2 more times that week to tell her that people could hem up the costumes, but they couldn't cut them. And to tell her to let the angel choir, not to let the angel choir wear lipstick. And by Sunday, Mother was already sick of the whole thing. Well, after church, we all filed into the back 7 pews, along with 2 or 3 Sunday school teachers who were supposed to keep everybody quiet. It was a terrible time to try and keep everybody quiet because all the little kids were tired and all the big kids were hungry and all the mothers wanted to go home and cook dinner. All the fathers wanted to go home and watch the football game on TV. Now, this isn't going to take very long, Mother told us. My father had said it had better not take very long because he wanted to watch the football game too, and he also said he hadn't had a decent meal all week. Well, first, I am going to tell you about the rehearsals, Mother said. We'll have our rehearsals on Wednesdays at 6:30. We're only going to have 5 rehearsals, so you must all try to be present at each one. What if we get sick? Asked the little kid in the front pew. You won't get sick, Mother told him, which is exactly what she told Charlie that morning, when Charlie said he didn't want to be a shepherd and he'd be sick to his stomach if she made him be one again. Now you little children in the cradle room in the primary class will be our angels, Mother said. You'll like that, won't you? They all said yes. What else could they say? The older boys and girls will be the shepherds and guests at the inn and members of the choir, Mother said, really zipping along, and I thought how mad Mrs. Armstrong would be at all the things she was leaving out. And we need Mary and Joseph, the 3 wise men and the angel of the Lord. They aren't hard parts, but they're very important parts, so those people must absolutely come to every rehearsal. What if they get sick? It was the same little kid, and it made you wonder what kind of a kid he was, that he was always so interested in sickness. They won't get sick either, Mother said, looking a little cross. Now we all know what kind of person Mary was. She was quiet and gentle and kind, and the girl who plays Mary should try to be that kind of person. I know many of you would like to be Mary in our pageant, but of course we can only have one Mary. So I'll ask for volunteers, and then we'll all decide together which girl should get the part. That was pretty safe to say, since the only person who ever raised her hand was Alice Wendelken. But Alice just sat there, chewing on a piece of her hair and looking down at the floor, and the only person who raised her hand this time was Imogene Herdman. "Did you have a question, Imogene?" Mother asked. I guess it was the only reason she could think of for Imogene to have her hand up. "No," Imogene said, "I want to be Mary." She looked over her shoulder. "And Ralph wants to be Joseph." "Yeah," Ralph said. Mother just stared at them. It was like the detective movie when the nice little old gray-haired lady sticks a gun in the bank window and says, "Give me all your money." And you couldn't believe it. Mother couldn't believe this. "Well," she said after a minute, "we want to make sure everyone has a chance. Did anyone else want to volunteer for Joseph?" Well, no one did. No one ever did, especially not Elmer Hopkins, but he couldn't do anything about it because he was the minister's son. One year he didn't volunteer to be Joseph, and neither did anyone else, and afterwards I heard Reverend Hopkins talking to Elmer out in the hall. "You're going to be Joseph, and that's it." "I don't want to be Joseph," Elmer said. "I'm too big. I feel dumb up there with all these little kids. They're a pain in the neck." "I understand that," Reverend Hopkins said. "I can even sympathize. But till somebody else volunteers for Joseph, you're stuck with it." "Nobody's ever going to do that," Elmer said. "I even offered Grady Baker 50 cents to be Joseph, and he wouldn't do it. I'm going to have to be Joseph for the rest of my life." "Cheer up," Reverend Hopkins told him. "Maybe somebody will turn up." I'll bet he never thought that it would be Ralph Herdman. "All right," Mother said. "Ralph will be our Joseph. Does anyone else want to volunteer for Mary?" Mother looked around, trying to catch someone's eye. Anyone's eye. "Janet, Roberta, Alice, don't you want to volunteer this year?" "No," Alice said, so low you could hardly hear her. "I don't want to." Nobody volunteered to be wise men either, except Leroy, Claude, and Ollie Herdman. So there was my mother stuck with a Christmas pageant full of Herdmans in all the main roles. There was one Herdman left over and one main role left over, and you didn't have to be very smart to figure out that Gladys was going to be the angel of the Lord. "What do I have to do?" Gladys wanted to know. "The angel of the Lord was the one who brought the good news to the shepherds," Mother said. Well, right away all the shepherds started fidgeting around, because they figured any good news that came from Gladys would come with a smack in the teeth. Charlie's friend Hobie Carmichael raised his hand. "I can't be a shepherd. We're going to Philadelphia." "Why didn't you say so before?" Mother asked. "I forgot." Another kid said, "My mother doesn't want me to be a shepherd." "Why not?" Mother said. "I don't know. She just said don't be a shepherd." One kid was honest. "Gladys Herdman hits too hard." "Why, Gladys isn't going to hit anybody," Mother said. "What an idea. The angel just visits the shepherds in the fields and tells them that Jesus is born." "And hits them," said the kid. And of course he was right. You could just picture Gladys whamming shepherds left and right. But Mother said the idea was perfectly ridiculous. "I don't want to hear another word about it," she said. "No shepherds may quit or get sick," she added before the kid in the front pew could say anything. While everybody was leaving, Mother grabbed Alice Wendelken by the arm. "Alice, why in the world didn't you raise your hand to be Mary?" "I don't know," Alice said. But I knew. I'd heard Imogene Herdman telling Alice what would happen to her if she dared to volunteer. You had to admire her. Some people might not think that such a thing could happen. But with the Herdmans, yes, it could. "The Herdmans will do anything," Alice said, "but your mother should have told them no. Somebody should have put Imogene out of the pageant, and all the rest of them too. They'll do something terrible. They'll ruin the whole thing." I thought she was probably right. So did lots of other people, and for 2 or 3 days all anybody could talk about was the Herdmans being Mary and Joseph and all. Mrs. Homer McCarthy called Mother to say that she had been thinking about it, and if the Herdmans wanted to participate in our Christmas celebration, why didn't they hand out programs at the door? "We don't have programs for the Christmas pageant," Mother said. "Well, maybe we should print some up and put the Herdmans in charge of that." Alice's mother told the lady's aide that it was sacrilegious to let Imogene Herdman be married. Somebody we never heard of called up Mother on the telephone and said her name was Hazelbeck and she lived on Sproul Hill, and was it true that Imogene Herdman was going to be Mary in the Christmas play? Yes, Mother said, Imogene's going to be Mary. And the rest of them too, the lady asked. Yes, Ralph is going to be Joseph, and the others are the wise men, the angel of the Lord. You must be crazy, Mrs. Hazelbeck told Mother. I live next to that outfit with their yelling and screaming and their insane cat and their garage door banging up and down all day long, and you are in for a rowdy time. Well, some people said it wasn't fair for one family that didn't even go to our church to barge in and take over the pageant. My father said that somebody better lock up the Women's Society silver service, and my mother said that she would rather be in the hospital with Mrs. Armstrong. But then the flower committee took a potted geranium to Mrs. Armstrong and told her about this. She nearly fell out of bed, traction bars and all. I feel personally responsible, she said. Whatever happens, I accept the blame. If I had been up and doing my duty, none of this would have happened. And that made my mother so mad she couldn't see straight. If she'd been up and around, it wouldn't have happened, Mother said. That woman, she must be surprised that the sun is still coming up every morning without her to supervise the sunrise. Well, let me tell you. Don't tell me, my father said. I'm on your side. I just mean that Helen Armstrong is not the only woman alive who can run a Christmas pageant. Up until now, I have made up my mind just to do the best I could under the circumstances, but now, she stabbed a meat fork into the pot roast. I am going to make this the very best Christmas pageant that anybody ever saw. And I'm going to do it with the Herdmans, too. After all, they raised their hands when nobody else did, and that's that. And it was, too. For one thing, nobody else wanted to take over the pageant with or without the Herdmans. And for another thing, Reverend Hopkins got fed up with all the complaints and told everybody where to get off. Of course, he didn't just say, go jump in the lake, Mrs. Wendelken, or anything like that. He just reminded everyone that when Jesus said, suffer the little children to come unto me, he meant all the little children, including the Herdmans. So that shut everybody up, even Alice's mother, and the next Wednesday, we started rehearsals. That's chapter 3. We're up to chapter 4 next time. See you tomorrow.